call the meeting to order. If we all would stand and face the flag, we'll do the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Simon, will you take roll call, please?
Commissioner Dibdle,
Here.
Commissioner Wire,
Here.
Commissioner Corbin,
Here.
Commissioner Shaw,
Here,
Mayor Denner.
Here. We have the agenda in front of us. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda. Second.
Is there any further comments or discussion? Hearing or seeing, all in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. We'll move down into appearances acknowledgement. Do I have a motion to acknowledge the September 2021 board minute or board meeting minutes?
motion to acknowledge.
Second.
Any further comments or discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Move on to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Was there, hold on,
Aye.
was there the board meeting minutes weren't in the consent calendar?
We have moved them to acknowledgements, right?
Yes,
Was it?
they
Yeah.
moved, they moved, to-
Might
min-
have been before.
meeting minutes moved to acknowledgements as opposed to consent because you're saying I've received them. You're not saying I agree to everything that's in them and binding
Oh,
yourself to.
wow.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All in favor of approving the consent calendar, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Move down into the unfinished business, 2022 budget discussion.
So after our Thursday conversation, I did look into if we looked at bonding a new city hall in addition to streets. And I have numbers here that show what our current debt schedule looks like for the next 5 years. One of them is without city hall in there, one of them is with city hall. We are our constitutional debt based on current property values is limited at 19,000. You'll see on there, anything that's green falls under constitutional debt. Those are either allocated or paid via property tax or sales tax. So those green ones are the ones that are applicable to our constitutional debt. Things that have a sewer charge or a water charge or electric charge that use them as collateral do not apply to our constitutional debt. If we just bond the streets, we would be looking at 8.4 million that's applicable to constitutional debt, which is about half of what our available constitutional debt is. If we add the city hall in there, we, excuse me, we would be looking at 13.9. Still approximately a little over 5 million below our constitutional debt level. If you look, the Madison Aquatic Center will be paid off in 2022, freeing up approximately $300,000 an annual payment. If you go out the gen plant that we just refinanced, the last payment for that is 2025. That'll free up another 400,000 in annual debt.
Doesn't the aquatic center have its own levy on our property tax?
It does.
So that'll fall off.
It will fall off in tax rates with,
So we won't have that revenue.
right, it's not correct. It's not additional revenue. It's just a less out going out.
Revenue
Yep.
neutral.
Yep, correct.
So you're saying we won't do the BAN, we need the bond, right? away?
Yes, yes. With the USDA loans, they let you do, because they're backed by the USDA, they will let you basically lock in that rate. They do not do that with just a general sales tax bond. So we would have to bond that now to lock in that 2.02% rate. Which would be, and they would essentially put that all in our accounts right away. There's no drawdowns like there is with the RD project, but we start accruing interest on it as well right away, as opposed to having the ability to just pay interest until the construction's done.
So once we get the money.
Yep,
we
you
get
would want to,
close.
you would want to go forward. And speaking with Colliers, they are anticipating rate increase on or about the beginning of the year and climbing going forward. It's probably not going to get cheaper in reality, which is, I guess, with all construction right now, it's not going to get less expensive.
You went only 4 million on the city hall.
I
So
did. We have 1.7 million currently in reserves for that. We could bond the whole thing and put that 1.7 million back into the general fund cash. But this 9 million is basically a starting point. And we can adjust from there depending upon what direction you guys want to head.
How much do you think the city hall is gonna be?
Well, the designs aren't finished yet. Of course, if it's done sooner rather than later, that's cost effective for us, but our higher estimates are around 5 million.
No,
Higher estimates. I like to be conservative when I estimate expenses, so. That's why I say higher.
looks like we could borrow another, or bond for another million for like 60,000 a year. Based on the 2 annual payments. We
True.
could get some gold foil from the ceiling or something. No,
No,
Marshall says no.
no,
We have to have a certain the plans etched in stone in order to lock this bond in.
You don't, because it's backed by sales tax. It's not backed by the building itself.
And you're thinking you want to do this prior to the end of the year.
To lock in that rate, yeah.
Right.
If you, I don't know what rates are gonna go to. I can't give you that information.
Did they have a feeling?
They just said they're going up, and everything that they're hearing is there's a big push to move them upward. But I don't think they would basically tell you what they think they're gonna do at this point, because
Is there any penalty to paying down the bond early?
no. No. And there's, yeah, there's not a Okay, if they're in the detail of it, it basically balances out to 3%. There's a bit of a premium on the front side of it that is discounted on the lower end, but it evens out to 2.02%.
James, where are you getting those numbers as far as, we have an active plan or an active building that we're looking at, or the architects involved?
Sure. I guess it's probably prudent to give some background. A couple of years ago, our police department initially started looking at building a new facility for their police station. Since then, it's been proposed that City Hall would go along with that. So they had designs pretty well detailed and figured out for the police station. But once we added in the City Hall, the finance administration, engineering, all related departments, obviously we need to look at the designs again. It's believed that at one point we would look at a one-story building. Now we're discussing a two-story building, because if you're having a city hall in there with commission chambers, and if you have a meeting where you have a large number of public down there, you're needing enough parking. And right now, the designs for a one-story building, we believe wouldn't meet the current needs for space inside the building as well as parking outside the building. So that pushes us to a two-story building, and there's no problem with that. I think it's a wise choice. It just means that we have to really look at the designs again. So a group of us met with the architect last week, I believe, and conveyed a lot of the interest and the thing that we'd be looking for in a building, the needs that our staff would have. And they are expecting to have some draft designs back to us in 3 weeks.
Very briefly, a couple of the maybe shortcomings of the current facility, or what's some of the drivers?
I would say accessibility sticks out for me. The police station side here does have easy access and no steps. The rest of City Hall doesn't. You have to come through here to use the lift. We have a number of residents who come into who maybe could use a lift, but they opt not to when they do stuff in the City Hall side. So the accessibility side is a priority. General space. I think the maintenance of this building, it's starting to show its use. Since Justin's here, I'll ask the chief if you want to kind of talk about the needs for your police.
Well, we're obviously, we have a huge shortage issue, some private storage issue, privacy issues. When we have potential victims, the only place to take a wait outside of our office is in the hallway. Really don't want to re-victimize people. We don't have enough storage space. Our evidence storage has been full for years. We are using multiple facilities around the city that we can find to store evidence. Interview rooms, we don't have a shortage. We are just, we've been bursting at the seams for about probably 15 years. And just to expound on what Jameson was saying, when we started this project a couple of years ago, we looked at the cost of gutting this building and redoing it. And that cost came in, if I recall correctly, somewhere in the 2.5 million. And at that point in time, the plans that we were looking at for the new City Hall one-story was 3.5. So it didn't really make much sense to gut this, start all over with all the issues that we have here with plumbing and heating. We've got a quarter of the building right now that does not have heating or cooling. Due to that, we moved some of our officers' office space out to the old Cars for Less, and they've been out there for about a year and a half. So those are some of the issues that we're running into. And as Jameson stated, the longer we wait, it seems like that cost continuously goes up.
Thank you. As far as the budget discussion item on today's agenda goes, I believe that the direction that we're looking for is what you'd like staff to include in the budget to be proposed at the next meeting in ordinance as relates to whether we should be moved forward with City Hall. If so, what financing we should be using, how much cash on hand versus bonding authority.
Sonia, could you run through, the equipment that each department wants and a price on it?
Yep. So I Hold.
Before we do that, can we kind of wrap up the city
Oh,
hall?
okay.
If it's your thing.
Obviously, the rates. For that bottle. How much? I guess numbers and plans. We're at the infant stage. Is what I'm hearing. Of the
Yeah.
whole concept.
Yes, I'd asked the architect last week what the soonest timeline would be if we wanted to take advantage of rates and building costs before any more increases would occur. And they said it would certainly be possible to be breaking ground in 22 with completion at some point toward the end of 23. They're looking at probably 18 months. Right?
I guess from my perspective, I'd like to see this included in discussion. But, obviously, we're gonna move towards that cautiously, depending on what comes back with the architecture and the building, so. And I would agree with the 4 million right now, but knowing that we can be a little bit flexible on that yet, try to.
I think we just want to see what we get for 4 million. What that
Yes, that makes sense.
provides.
Direction we need.
I will plug it into the budget like, for your review. And when we met with them last, they were where we get that, 4.5 to 5 million. It was kind of the direction that they're giving us guidance that they think they can do it for. Very preliminary, of course. But I originally started at 3.5 million, and with the, inflation and the rates or the rate at which materials are going up and labor is going up. I don't know that they're going back down. We're going to ever see that 3.5 million again. In response to Marshall's question regarding capital improvements for equipment. Grab these out of the budget report. Capital outlay, machinery and equipment for the PD is a new car, 74,000. Streets is 604,000 604,000, there we go. 2 pickups, 1 payloader, motor grader, plow, a used chassis, and a dump truck box. Parks is 140,000, includes a $75,000 mower, $25,000 groomer, 10,000 for a used pickup, 14,000 for a grass overseeder, and 11,000 for a plug aerator. Water, 54,700 new pickup, slide in toolbox, and a mini excavator. The mini excavator is split between 3 departments and total cost of that excavator is 85,000. Electric is 105,250. Mini excavator that I already mentioned. Pickup and cable wire trailer. Sewer would be a sewer camera truck, and then the other portion of that mini excavator. And then solid waste and recycling is 256,000 for a new garbage truck, a dump body, skid steer. I think under electric total was 105,000. Sewer was 212,750. Does that give you what you were looking for, Marshall?
Thank you. Motor grader, is that something we will replace an item? Yeah, or you can talk right there. You're loud enough.
Yeah, sometimes. We're kind of discussing that today, that, you know, on a good winter, we get by with one motor grader, but, like 2 years ago, we couldn't keep up. And the only thing that we have down pressure to scrape with are the motor graders. And it just seems like we're running circles with that one. There's an option to rent one, we rented one 2 years ago. It's more work than it was worth for them. It's throwing us off. It's
I gotta
because
find a rental this year.
we could,
So
that was, we can't get around this year. So there's some other options there, but that is half of that, but
Every other half.
not for sure. We've got two more graders. That last plows, but right now, if we come in on a typical storm, we come in at 4. And we're usually done plowing by. We gotta get back, pick it all up. We have about 7 units that we plow with, and that's one of our main units that we use. Plus, we have all the added airports, runways, taxiways, that takes away from what we're doing in town, so. Like I said, typical year. 2 years ago, I think about 3 years ago, we couldn't have enough equipment thrown in it, so it was storm after storm. Last year, we kind of caught a break, with it melt away. The biggest thing with those motor graders is you go in straight. Gotta get that. Ice off of there.
We have the employee power to
Right now, we
keep
have,
all the equipment running.
we have to back up and to get everything plowed, then we go back and we start picking up. And as they were plowing back, putting the trucks, we start hauling. We had about equal amounts. Well, it takes longer to pick it up.
So you're planning on keeping the old one too?
Yeah, I think we have to discuss it.
Other question I had, thank you, Gary.
Yeah.
The other question I had for Sonia was, do we have total on the budget yet? Or something close?
Well, we're getting there. I've got
Yeah.
most of the RD numbers. They were gonna try to get them to me Friday. I do not have what's gonna be completed yet in this year versus what's gonna be done in next. So I don't.
Other discussion?
How much use are we gonna get out of a mini excavator when there's 6 of them sitting around the county and they could go rent them if they really need to? You got a backhoe out there. How much more do you need a mini excavator? I think that's just a waste of money.
Brad, you want to address that?
Certainly, how was that split? Between which departments?
65, 20, 15 between electric would be the 65 and then 20 water, 15 sewer.
Mayor Commissioners, in the past, we've had most of our electricity was overhead. You could reach from the street, go up there in the alleys, go up there with a bucket truck to get to it. Now it's all in the back. yards and different places where you don't really have great access. We've changed a lot of it around from what it used to be to what it is now. Getting in the backyards to pick and transformer up and move it around, you run the risk of destroying a lot of landscaping. We bought ground mats to put underneath the trucks, but that's only good when the ground is firm in the spring or wet periods of time. Even with the ground mats, you do quite a bit of damage to the soil and stuff. The ability to get in there and pick up transformers, move them in, move them out, is one of the big things that we looked at. The other one is, the water and sewer guys. It's nice to have, the ability to dig and transfer material without having to take up multiple lanes of traffic, depending on where you're at. Because some of our streets are fairly narrow. And by the time you go and start working on something, you clog up the whole street. Sometimes you're in the boulevard in between trees. The backhoe doesn't fit. So you're forced in the middle of the winter to try to figure out how you're going to get in there and dig this area where you're in between trees and the boulevard. There's a lot of places where the mini excavator is going to be able to work where the backhoe can't work. And, between ground pressure, size and all that stuff, it's something that we had one in Fort Pierre. We had a backhoe just like exact same model backhoe as what the city of Madison has. And that backhoe was getting a lot of use up until the day that we bought the mini excavator. And when we bought the mini excavator, the backhoe stopped being used so much, and the mini excavator became the one that got used the most. Things like removing asphalt, you'd think that a backhoe being a bigger machine, heavier machine would work better than a mini excavator. The mini excavator will drag that backhoe all over the world on the asphalt. It works 4 times better than a backhoe. And if you get a good operator in it, that mini excavator can go through asphalt way better for repairs and that type of stuff than a backhoe. So there's a lot of advantages to it. There's some disadvantages, and we understand those, and we're going to work around them. But the thing is that for the type of work that we do and the things that we need to get done, it looked like the mini excavator was a great addition to the backhoe, so that we can do. Because there's been days we've had multiple water breaks. And you can only dig one at a time. And when the call comes in at whatever time of the day or whatever, and you got to go out there and start working on it, it's kind of a difficult to try to find somebody that's got a mini excavator, figure out where it's at, get it transportation lined up, all this other stuff. And if we had one of our own, we can roll it and make it go. The other thing is other parts of the city will be able to utilize it. Now, granted, it didn't get paid for out of the other parts of the city, but I'll guarantee you the parks will use it. I'll guarantee you the streets will use it. And it'll be something that'll be an advantage to the entire city of Madison, but it'll be provided by the funds from utility. And that's something that we figure is a benefit to the entire city, to utilize utilities to provide equipment for the entire city. So I think that's another selling point, that it's something that provides benefit, not just the utilities, but to every single part. Are there any questions?
We rented or used one.
Several years ago, they rented one and used it for one small project. And it was in an area where it was pretty swampy, and they didn't think they'd be able to get the backwind. That's the other reason that, the low ground pressure and everything, we get in some of these swampy areas that we have. It's nice to have something that can track through it pretty good and not get stuck immediately as soon as it enters, soft ground. So that's everything. So it's, it's not a perfect machine, but like I said, we had one, and at the city of Fort Pierre. We also had an excavator, full-size excavator. So we had a backhoe, a full-size excavator, and a mini excavator, and they all got used for the different needs that we had around the city. And with some of our deep stuff, it's hard to get at, and the mini's not going to fix that problem. But like I say, we had all 3 of those pieces in Fort Pierre, so it's something that the more equipment we get, the better equipment we get, the more the crew can do.
Sonia, are you able to run a report that would tell us how much or how often we contracted that work out?
If we know who we've contracted it
We'd have to
from,
find out. I can
Just to get it
probably
a rough estimate.
I can look.
Fred, I got one question, bucket truck. I know it isn't on here, but we talked about it, about getting a new bucket truck. And on Thursday, we said that they're out like 700 days, correct? My concern is the last 2 years, we looked at a bucket truck because the issue was that it wasn't getting past inspection, the boom. I mean, here we are, third year. Is it passing?
We have to have a special rider on the bucket truck because it's no longer certified by the inspection team. The way it's set up, so that basically there's a rider that goes on with that says there's a limit to their liability for our continued use of the bucket. So we've taken on a good share of the liability for running beyond the normal certification life.
I was just concerned that that's the reason why we started looking into this, because it wasn't passing.
And it got put off for 5
Right, and
years.
it got put off.
And now now because of the economy and the way things are
Yep.
going, they're out 2 years.
I just wanted to know if what our backup plan was on that.
And it'll be another $20,000. So
Is that a dielectric test that's failing, or is that a weight restriction? or something?
it's just basic wear and tear and age of the machine. So that what they do is that it's a Terex machine. And Altech is our inspection because they do our other bucket trucks here in the city. And they will not certify beyond 15 years with their standard. And then in order to get it certified beyond 15 years, we have to have this agreement rider, if you will, to their inspection. It says that this is the limitations of their liability on the inspection.
Thank you.
That's not on here. It's a 20 this year's budget. list.
Right, well, we're carrying it over, yeah. Just thought of that after. Any more discussion on the budget?
Why can't they rent one of them mini excavators from the County International? They got them sitting out there all the time. Yeah, it's a lot cheaper than having one sitting in the yard out here. I don't know. I just don't understand where all the money's gonna come from. I know Lake County International out there has little ones, because I know somebody's rented them. And Jared might even know that.
We can definitely look into a rent to own option, maybe with who's out there.
Well, it'd be better than kicking out big dollar.
Do you have any inkling of how much that rental costs?
Like that.
Do you know how much the rental typically costs?
How about the
The rental costs typically?
certain by now.
Sure.
No, we'll look at that.
Any further comments, discussion?
I'd like to make one on that Gary suggested getting that maintainer. He really needs two maintainers. If you get next to one, you can get rid of two of them, work with one-way plows you run around the street with, that don't do nothing. That is just a good idea, and I think a lot of taxpayers agree.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay. We'll move down to new business. We have item number 1, set the bid date for bid number 907 for November 10th. For the MAC improvements. Do you want to bring us up to speed on that one? Brett?
Yes, you should have in your packet the bid advertisement for November 10th at 2 p.m. And we have a pre-bid meeting scheduled for November 3rd. So all the bidders can come in, look at facilities, go over the plans, ask the architect questions, that type of stuff. And then have the bid opening, standard practice here with the bid bonds and all that stuff. This would be for the bulk of the remaining items. Most of this is geared towards the fixing the mechanical and structural things that we want to fix inside the pool room and to add a storage facility. The one thing that isn't in there, we originally had in there the painting and that type of stuff, the touch up. When we had that exterior stuff in there, as far as resealing the building and that, they had it all put together, they pulled it all out, and we can look at whether we want to add that in yet, the interior part or whatever on the coating. But if we were gonna have somebody come in and do the exterior of the building, it'd be the same, we'd have to do the interior at the same time, and there might be some economy of scale at that, so we didn't want to split those up and end up causing us, costing us more money. And so that is not in these plans right at the moment.
Those are the plans that you sent out.
Yes,
Is what they're gonna do.
yes.
Anything else? Okay. Do I have a motion to set the bid date for November 10th? Bid number 907, Aquatic, or the Madison Aquatic Center improvements.
Second. Question for you, Brad, is there gonna be timelines associated with this, or would this affect opening?
Yes, and that's a good question. There's gonna be two separate timelines. One timeline will be the mechanical part and the reconfiguring of the room space for the chlorine. So those are all kind of safety related and trying to get the building so that it's as safe as it can be. Those would be done ahead of opening, with like a May 1 completion date, somewhere in that timeline. The storage building would not have to be done until the end of the summer, when we want to start putting stuff in there at the end of the year to, keep from getting the interior spaces cluttered full of stuff and get some chemicals out of the interior spaces. Anything that can freeze, we would move out to the storage, facility if we could, as much as possible. If you go in there now, every single room is rat hole to the ceiling with all kinds of stuff, and including the mechanical room, which is something we really want to try to avoid. And I'd like to see that along with chemicals as much as possible that can freeze, move outside and get into a location where it's not in the way of operating or cleaning or anything else. If you're going to go to prepare the place for work, it'd be a lot easier to start by cleaning it up and then putting stuff in place rather than having to move everything 2 or 3 times while you're cleaning and getting it set up. So that was kind of the idea behind the storage. It was something I think that probably should have been done originally, but it just wasn't realized at the time. I don't think that how much equipment there was going to be stored on site.
So a lot of this would be improvements that would be outside of what we receive for insurance money.
It is, and right now with the current building materials cycle that we're in and the availability now, the availability kind of goes off and on. The prices are fluctuating. It's kind of hard to nail it down. They were looking at somewhere around $75,000 and up for this project. It could be quite a bit higher depending on the timelines and the availability. We do know that some of the metals are hard to come by these days. So that was one of the concerns, is that the pre-finished metals might be a little bit of delay, but most of that's going to be on the storage building. So most of the stuff inside is going to be like galvanized tin, that type of stuff. So it shouldn't be as much. And then most of the reconfiguring is going to be done with the freaking block type materials, the CMU units.
So it's my understanding that the park board had a desire for us to reallocate the operational budget for the actual pool for upgrades. Are we gonna be able to make a motion so that's reflected, I guess? I've never reallocated money like that, or do we just, either of you have a thought on
I
that?
didn't hear the question. Please,
Honestly, that I'm new to that as well. However, I would, being that this isn't going to happen until 2022, we would just put it in our budget and it would come from cash.
Well, the park board had asked that there's an operational budget for the outlook, we'll utilize that money for repairs and upgrades.
And there should be carryover cash equivalent to what was not used this year. And the bulk of the repairs so far have all been paid for by insurance. So I don't think we've spent really any of our money on any of the repairs up to this point.
But this
Yeah.
project should fall under.
Not much.
This would be, the portion of the mechanical stuff and that would probably be still some that might be covered by what's left of insurance, but we will exceed that by the time we build a new storage facility. That would be an improvement, so that'd be separate.
Thank you. Good answer.
we have a motion?
Right, second.
I think we do. yeah.
Oh, okay. Motion and second. Before we vote on that, I just want to bring everybody up. We did have Hawkins in, they're our chemical suppliers. They put in two 300-gallon tanks for liquid chlorine. That's in. New controller is in, already installed. It didn't give him the key to get into the acid room, so we got a new pump for the acid. He will be back when we fill it, just to run everything, make sure we're getting everything okay on that. He will have a company come down and clean the pool. We'll have another company come down and grout the pool that we usually do every year. Looking at the April timeline. Everything else that we need, backboard, both lifeguard chairs are bought. So it should be ready to, I'm still working on the new grading system for the curve of the pool. It looks like it's on track. Were there any other comments or discussion on this motion? Not, all in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Brett. Item number 2, I'll turn it over to Jameson. Discussion on hiring of the city engineer and possible restructuring of the engineering department.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We began advertising for a city engineer position several months ago. We have received a couple, but few applicants, and we have not been able to secure a candidate for that position. In the time, I know several of you, possibly all of you, actually have reached out to me just asking for updates on this item and asking what would happen if we were unable to secure a candidate in the city engineer position. On a related note, I'll say that a couple of us were at the municipal league conference a couple of weeks ago, and there's probably 5 or 6 towns that are looking or are about to be looking for city engineers, which makes it for a very competitive environment. And from other towns that have already had openings or started their advertising or have selected candidates, they've had very few applicants as well. So we're not the only ones out there. I guess that makes us feel a little bit. So as far as the question of what happens or what are our options if we would choose to go in a different direction than hiring another city engineer, I put some thought into this, speaking with some of our department staff as well. And I think we do have some options. I'd say I'll summarize them into 2 broad options. First, we could stay the course. We can continue to advertise for a city engineer position and be patient and understand that sometimes that does take some time. I believe it was Rapid City or somebody that advertised for a full year before they secured an applicant or a candidate for that position. So that's our first option. The second option would be to restructure the department without having a city engineer on staff. We have had 2 staff in that department who have done a phenomenal job of keeping things moving, and especially the new person coming in here, I can't praise them enough because I have had very few items that they couldn't handle come to my attention. They are very self-sufficient and productive in that department, so I can't speak highly enough of the 2 folks that are in there. Knowing that, I believe that there would be options to restructure it. We could advertise for a different department head position publicly, but I believe there'd also be some internal staff that I think would be suitable for that role if the commission would like to move in that direction. So if we would restructure it, I would recommend having a department head, and since this person would have to be engineer, I would rename the department the Community Development Department. Community development is a title that is common in many other cities, especially Class 1 cities, similar to or bigger than the size of Madison. And I believe that community development better reflects and accurately describes what our employees there do. They aren't just doing engineering or design, but they're also doing permitting and zoning and much more. I will note that we are advertising or are soon going to be advertising for the building official and code enforcement officer. We have finalized that job description, just need to get it out there. So if we were to have the community development department, what would that look like? Well, we would have the director, we'd have 1 to 2 engineering techs, and we would have that code enforcement building official. I would recommend to the commission that the staff there likely would still need some support in one way or another. Exactly how, I'm not sure at this point, but I think we have some options there. I think you could hire an administrative assistant that could be exclusive to that department or shared with others. I think you could hire another engineering tech if we believe there was more need in that manner. And we could even hire a project engineer, somebody that still has that PE, that professional engineering certification that we have been wanting for that city engineer position. We could hire that as a project engineer who wouldn't have any management oversight or supervisory duties or responsibilities, but still would be somebody that could be stamping drawings and there on hand to assist with design. That would open up our applicant pool to really anybody. I'd be comfortable with somebody who is fresh out of school with that PE certification. So there are a few options there, and I don't think we need to make any decisions tonight. Certainly, there's no action list on the agenda. It's just here for discussion. Since there was questions about how we would operate without a city engineer, I do think we have some options available to us. So if we don't have any engineer on staff, whether it's a city engineer or a project engineer, we would need to partner with an engineering firm to have the engineer of record that is appointed likely annually for the city of Madison. I would recommend having a public process for that, likely doing a request for proposal or request for qualifications so that firms can submit their qualifications and the city can review them to see who they believe would be the best firm to partner with. That does not prevent us from hiring other firms for projects as it comes up, but it does state that we have somebody that we can turn to when we need help, possibly if we do need projects that are stamped, they would be able to review them and certify them. We'd have to work out some details on that, but we just need to make sure that we're aware that we'd have to be partnering with some firm to do that. I think that summarizes all the information that I want to bring up. If I didn't speak too fast, and it was a lot of information, but I stand by for questions.
We spoke with any of the cities that have structured contracting, their engineering.
Sure. Every city is unique. It's really true. My previous city, we were in a situation where we were small enough where we didn't have any engineering staff on hand. No city engineer, no engineering techs, nothing like that. And so I am very familiar with how that contracting out goes. And it really wouldn't change things a lot for the city now. There's a significant ebb and flow of the quantity of work that a city like ours needs to do each year. And those big projects are in every city, they're contracted out to different firms to handle that. And as far as day-to-day stuff, I believe we do have 2 very qualified engineering techs that are on staff already, and they'd be capable of designing some of the smaller projects that maybe don't need that certification, that stamp. And they'd also be able to reach out to our engineer on record to ask for assistance or to review designs if they would need that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good, thank you.
Any other discussion? Brian, you have anything?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'll just quickly say that I'd be in support of changing it in that manner. Do you think, or do we have any pulse on the availability of engineering techs? I mean, is that going to be the market like an engineer, or we can't find anyone?
That's a good question. I defer to Ryan or Dan. Do you have any idea?
I could say that, yes, we really looked into it.
We could research that for you. I have even heard from other engineering firms outside the municipal world that city engineers or people with that PE that maybe have 10 years of experience We'd ideally like some of your experience here. Those firms are even struggling to find people in that role too. So it's not just us as a city, it's not just cities in general.
No other discussion?
Just looking for, what would you like to direct staff to do?
Oh, you gave us options.
Yeah, in general, if you'd like a more specific proposal, come back or what are we looking
How long do we have yet?
Since April. Yeah, April, May, right in that. Chad left at the end of April.
Left
So
the end
it's-
of April, and I
it was-
remember discussing it right when I started.
Yeah, it's like right after
May.
you came, so.
I would say end of May, probably.
Yeah.
I would think for the time being, I like the idea of changing the role or renaming the department. And then for now, the path of least resistance might be hiring a firm. And so we can still solicit individuals to come work for us, but I have a hard time believing we don't have work piling up. At some point, we need to get some of that stuff done.
I will note that while I can't, again, praise our staff there enough, it can only go on for so long. They've been working extra hours and had a lot on their shoulders, so I don't want anybody to misconceive me thinking that we can just do this forever.
And hiring a firm might help us appreciate the value of a site engineer.
Oh, sorry, Brian.
I just want to make mention that engineering is going to be a challenge, no matter what way we go, even if we go with consultants, there's roughly $1 billion worth of water improvements are going to go forward. And, the fight for engineers is going to become very tight. South Dakota is growing, a lot of development going on. Engineering is going to be really hard to come by regardless of which way we go. And that we're all going to have to work harder and we're all going to have to step up to the plate because there's just not going to be the people available because there's so much money to be pouring into the state to do all this work, and it's gonna be the states around us too, so it's one of these perfect storms where with the end of the baby boom generation, a lot of the engineers are leaving, and there just aren't enough of them to go around and cover everything that we got coming up, so it's gonna be a challenge for everybody, not just Madison, all cities, everybody, because there just aren't enough, there's gonna be too much work.
What are you doing with that salary that engineer is supposed to be getting? It's just not getting paid out, getting paid the salary.
Currently, no, it doesn't go anywhere when there's not a person in the position.
Do these people that are doing extra work need a little something? Or if they're doing extra work, come on.
They're able to claim overtime with those extra hours, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they both are hourly employees who are paid overtime, and it's a great thought. It's something that's come to us as well in terms of we have employees across the city who are often filling in for vacant positions and taking extra duties and that we're considering.
When it comes to advertising for people with this engineer, are you guys considering possibly offering a relocation package? Like advertising in places like Virginia or something like that, where that have like these technical schools where they're producing a lot more engineers, perhaps. It's like Madison's a pretty cool place to live. Might be able to sell
Certainly something we consider.
it. Yeah. Well, so like, are we, when you say that you're advertising for this, is this like published like on like a website, like or like is it like a job listing?
Yeah, we publish it in multiple locations.
Okay.
Yeah, and we, to be honest, we probably wouldn't be looking at somebody straight out of school either. So we'd like to have somebody with some years of experience and
Gotcha.
ideally management experience.
Sure.
In order to be a professional engineer, you gotta have 4 years of experience.
That's right. Under someone, so. Sure, yeah. Okay. We'll move down to item number 3. Discuss and take any action on the continuation of the vaccine lottery program. Adam, did you have anything to start out with that?
You're muted right now.
unmute me. I said that we increased vaccination roughly 6% since we started this. That's what I can tell you from this side of it. Can't guarantee that directly relates to the vaccine lottery though as well. It just,
You say that you can or cannot, you were kind of breaking up there in the beginning.
we cannot guarantee, because we didn't ask that question when we started this.
Mr. Mayor, we'll say there's people here that want to talk in regards to this, so.
You want to come on up?
Oh, sure, we can talk together, if you'd like.
Oh, yeah. Of course, you know our feelings. We would
Can you
like
state your name? to the record, please?
Amy Christensen for Madison.
My name is Nathaniel Putney, I also live here.
And that $25,000 is something that you may or may not go ahead and put into this incentive program, and we're encouraging you not to. And put it towards something that will value everybody, like the water and sewer system. That's somewhere we would like to go.
Yeah, when looking over it, it looks like you guys have other options to spend that money. And it's also very easy not to spend money, especially if it's going towards something that's a very bad idea. Particularly as the Castle of Cards is kind of coming down around that concept anyways. I'm kind of surprised that anybody wants to have their name associated with something like that. I'm curious if Madison has got a history of, well, incentivizing medical experimentation on its citizens. Gene therapy, medical experiments. Is there a history in Madison of incentivizing programs for people to take part in medical experiments? When did you guys sign
You
this
don't have to
originally?
answer this question. You can if you'd like, but the commission can choose.
Sure, you don't have to answer me. This is all on record. We're all here together. So the first time that you guys, did you approve this previously?
The first half,
So you
The
did,
first half.
first half.
the first half. So it was a total of $25,000 originally, and then half of that has been spent so far on the
It
program?
was a total of 50.
Gotcha.
And it was decided to move it back to 25 the
Right.
first 5 weeks
Okay,
and see where it went.
sure.
And that's why we're here now, because it expires. If we wanted to continue
Sure.
on with the other 5 weeks, we would have to have an action tonight.
Interesting, okay. And does that money, does that lead to, or is that kind of like accounted for like in an overall budget? Like, would it make your budget appear $50,000 larger if you spent it? Or if you did not spend it, would it appear as though your budget is not quite as large?
Yeah, I mean, it's being used, it's ARPA funds that come in, so it's,
Sure.
it automatically supplements as those grant funds come in.
Okay.
That same 650,000 that came in could be used, anything that, within any guidance that's, provided by the IRS and
Sure.
the
So
Treasury. on how it
with
can be spent.
6%, which obviously the population of Madison is not very large, 6% is not a whole lot of people, and we can't necessarily tie that to the program. There are other things that you can spend the money on. Namely that water purification, right? Who doesn't like clean water? Okay, yeah, I will say that I know it's hard to talk about this subject because it's obviously so politicized, and I'm not trying to politicize this any further, but I am letting you know that it is a medical experiment. These vaccines, as they're called, only because the CDC has changed the definition of a vaccine. Technically, this is gene therapy. It's actually a medical experiment that you're encouraging people to do or to partake in. It's not. Well, actually, I am kind of curious, like, what the liabilities for that would be. Do you guys know if you're held liable if anybody gets injured by these things that you're incentivizing them to take part in this experiment?
I believe that was asked in the past when David was here. If I recall correctly from memory, he said no.
Interesting, yeah, that is kind of interesting because the liability schema behind all these things that these companies have signed off on. The only other thing I guess that I would be curious of specifically, as far as you guys are personally aware of, that the FDA has not approved any of these gene therapy shots that are available to anybody at the moment. They're not FDA approved. So right now, someone might be telling you that, no, you don't have any liability. This is uncharted territory. And just as one person to another, well, maybe I'm a more risk averse human being, but I would not be accepting that responsibility. I think the community has kind of spoken in terms of only 6% increasing. And of course, you can't really tie that to the incentive program anyways. There's other things you can spend the money on, and I would encourage you to spend the money on those other things. Thank you. Did you have anything else to say, ma'am?
Has anybody came forward to these meetings and said, rock, good job, guys, let's keep going with this? I haven't seen it. But you have seen our assignment, so.
And-
We're the people.
And we're the ones that are willing to come to these meetings, but we do represent a lot of other people behind us that don't.
I guess I can't speak for the other commissioners or Mr. Shaw on video, but I have had people not come to the meeting, but have visited with me on different times, and they were very happy with it.
Sure. Yeah, some people are going to be. Right. Okay. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else? Or did you?
I'm just kind of disappointed there's not a reserve sign on a seat for me at this point. No, I just wanted to say, I love the idea of injecting another 25,000 into the community over the holidays. I really do. I presented the little shopping incentive, but if that doesn't work, you know, maybe we tie it to the food bank. We tie it to something, because I think it would be huge for the downtown businesses to have that 25,000 floating out there. I'm just super concerned about it being attached to an unapproved medical injection. That's scary. That's really scary. So we're just asking you to vote no on spending another 25,000 on a vaccine incentive.
My daughter is a doctor, and she does have a lawsuit out there. So yes, if there are lawsuits out there,
Many
but
people.
along with hundreds of doctors along with her. So it's facts.
Is there any other discussion?
Can I ask you something? If we had an employee take on additional work with time, do you think we should give them a one-time bonus or increase their pay?
I'm sorry.
Not you, very truly. Yeah, you mentioned something. Well,
Yeah.
I just wonder what your opinion is.
One time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I guess I was on the fence with this. So I did some research in regards to funds too, and, you know, I think we can argue resources out there, of the vaccine, and whether it's hurting us or whether it's efficient or not. But these funds that were allocated to us they're called coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. And they define it as providing a substantial infusion of resources to help turn the tide on the pandemic and address its economic fallout. And my opinion is, I think, you know, the MAD money addresses the economic fallout. And according to the doctors that I know and trust, it's helping turn the tide on the pandemic. So I guess I will be voting in favor to extending this another 5 weeks.
That's known as the Delphi method, if no one's familiar with it, whether the gentleman is familiar with that terminology or not.
I don't believe you recognize to speak.
Sure.
So is that a motion from you, Kelly, to
Yeah,
with another 5 week?
yep, I'll make a motion to extend the vaccine MAD money lottery for another 5 weeks.
Second.
Is there any other discussion on the motion?
You read that one more time, Kelly, the economic, or just the verbiage.
Yeah, so it comes from the US Department of Treasury, and of course, it's called the American Rescue Plan is the funds that were associated with this. And the allocation is in the $1.4 million range for the city of Madison, I understand it. And basically, it's called the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds provide a substantial infusion of resources to help turn the tide on the pandemic and address its economic fallout. That's how it wants us to use the funds.
Economic.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can I say something? Has there been an economic fallout because of this? I understand there hasn't been, so we don't qualify for a lot of these things because we have not had a fallout because of this.
So the city has not had lost revenue, but I think you can find all kinds of businesses in town that would tell you in the retail sector that they've had fallout. There's restaurants in town that can't find staff. There's economic fallout. It's just not, our revenue funds are relatively stable. People pay for utilities, they pay their taxes. That's what funds your city. So the city has not seen that significant economic fallout, but individual businesses and people within the city have lost jobs or have lost revenue because of the pandemic.
any further comment? Not hearing any. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Public comment?
Hey, here's a comment for you. I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ, and it's duly noted, all of you.
Nothing. Okay. Go down with the announcements. I have an announcement that, last Wednesday, we had an appreciation for our employees. Unfortunately, one of my meetings, I was trying to get there, the meeting ran over, so I didn't get there. I want to thank, we had 4 employees get 5-year awards, 2 that got 10. We had a 15-year, a 20-year, and a 30-year. I just, being as I wasn't there, I want to reach out to everybody, not just these people, but everybody that works for the city. Thank you for your employment here.
That was nice, Marshall. Thank you.
We also have, did you want to announce? the
Go ahead.
electronic? Okay. We also have, just want to let everybody know, electronic drop off, October 30th, 2021 at the recycling center. And is there a time? 9 to 3. Okay. Is there anybody else that had an announcement? Hearing any, do I have a motion to go into exec session?
So moved.
Second?
Yes,
You
thank
got
you,
it.
Gary.
Appreciate that.
All in favor, signify by aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We will